most dangerous.
Obsessive dedication and religious fanaticism is not an idea exclusive to the West, as cults have a history of emerging from even the most unexpected of places. This is exactly what occurred in the case of the Aum Shinrikyo cult during the late 1980s in Japan. After the Second World War, Japan's society began developing rapidly, and those who could not keep up were left behind. As cities, technology, and the government faced rapid changes, many grew critical of the new world that they were faced with.
Okay.
And this mix of exclusion and mistrust, paired with the progression and accessibility of chemical warfare, was the perfect breeding ground to create the deadliest cult Japan had ever seen.
Deadliest? In what way? Like killing niggas? Or like just generally like a terrorist group?
Shoko Asahara was born on March 2nd, 1955. He was one of
he already looks like a demon.
9 children in an impoverished family living in the Kumamoto prefecture.
Okay.
His birth name was Chizuo Matsumoto, which he later changed.
Bro, these names
but
are
for the sake
cold,
of simplicity, we'll be referring to him as Shoko Asahara from now on. From birth, Asahara developed infantile glaucoma, visually impairing him, a condition that would leave him almost fully blind and in his later years forced Asahara to attend a boarding school for blind children. Although, even from a young age, Asahara seemed to like the idea
People scared of a blind guy.
He was even known to be a bully at his boarding school, physically injuring his classmates or taking their money.
How?
But as Asahara grew older, he leaned towards a more mental and spiritual lifestyle. He had graduated from junior college in 1975 and turned towards the study of acupuncture, before ultimately devoting his time to studying religion in the early 1980s.
Oh no, here we go. What
but
religion?
Ironically, as Asahara became more religious, his hate towards Japan and the Japanese government grew. He grew dissatisfied with the traditional Japanese Buddhism and leaned more towards a mix of Tibetan Buddhism, Christianity, and his own prophecies instead, preferring a form of religion without Japanese influence. He meshed this new branch of theology with his own knowledge of meditation.
So what makes him so deadly,
and
though?
would soon go
That's
on
what I
to
want to
create
know.
his own religious organization.
Oh shit.
But for the meantime,
any cult is
Asahara had
there's
to
a
start
problem.
small. In 1984, Asahara, now a guru, had created a one-room yoga and meditation class, a platform he would soon use to introduce his own religious ideas to his students. The steadily growing class was based in Shibuya City, a special ward in Tokyo known to house 2 of the busiest railway stations in the world,
Okay.
a detail that Aum Shinrikyo would soon take into account. Nevertheless, Asahara had initially named the class Aum Shinsen no Kai, before later changing it to Aum Shinrikyo, or Supreme Truth in English. In 1989, after constant pressure by members of Aum Shinrikyo, the Tokyo Metropolitan Government finally recognized the group as a religious corporation.
Okay.
A title that would grant the cult immunity against investigations into its activities.
Oh.
This was a major turning point for the cult. Recognition as a legitimate organization meant that Aum could increase its reach and devious practices without being investigated.
Practices.
This formality
What,
would
like
later
some
prove
some
to be
fucking
a
like
severe
devil
lapse
shit.
in judgment on the part of the Tokyo
Like fucking
Metropolitan
sacrificing
Police.
people.
Before the meantime, Aum Shinrikyo, now more of a cult than a class.
Yeah, when you see the man literally being praised as a god, like bro's literally doing the symbols like he's a god, yeah, that's when you know you're lost. That's when you know it's over.
Was growing rapidly.
Look at
as
him.
Was modern Japanese culture. With the increasing popularity of anime and pop culture magazines, Asahara saw the perfect opportunity to reach Japan's youngest and most impressionable demographic. After being recognized as a legitimate corporation, Aum's membership grew exponentially, as did their net worth. Most members of the cult were young adults who had seen the group in magazines or flyers. One of Asahara's most popular selling points was his apparent ability to levitate for hours at a time. He also claimed to
That man, that literally looks like he's jumped and done that. They know that's cap. Come on now. That's like a.
be able to cleanse the sins of members and often
Yeah, it's all
emphasized of a third world war or a nuclear apocalypse
literally-
in which only the members
I
of
don't. I never get how people get manipulated so fucking like quickly to think that a whole man is a god. A whole man can cleanse your fucking sins. Like what? How can you? How slow can you actually be in the brain to really get? It's because they always try and manipulate the weak people, the weak-minded people. That's all it is. The people that really join this organization to really think that it's an actual thing.
Ohm would survive. This, along with its recognition as a legitimate corporation, accelerated Ohm's growth rapidly, and by the early 1990s, Ohm had amassed around 10,000 members, and their net worth had reached over 500 million yen.
Yeah,
But as Ohm grew in net worth and members, so did their opposition.
Okay.
Over the years, former cult members had begun to speak out against Ohm Shinrikyo's zero-tolerance policy and its torture of members who tried to leave the cult without permission. There had been rumors spreading around the general public that members of Ohm had been subjected to inhumane conditions and been experimented on.
He looked
Of
funny
course,
too, man.
these rumors were all true, but because of the aforementioned title as a religious corporation, no major investigations could be launched. With no action from the government against Ohm, more and more anti-Ohm groups started forming. Those who had relatives or family members in the cult were becoming increasingly anxious about their safety. Tsutsumi Sakamoto, a prominent lawyer of multiple anti-Ohm groups, had publicly denounced the cult and claimed that its members were being held there against their will. But as Sakamoto began working on a class action lawsuit against the cult,
I'm really interested in these type of like, when they say techniques, bro, are they talking about like, oh no, I don't even want to know, chat. It's gonna be crazy.
he and his whole
I know it's gonna
family
be some crazy
seemingly
shit.
disappeared from their apartment in Yokohama, the second most populated city
Okay, they have power like that. Disappeared.
in Japan. At the time, no one had connected Sakamoto's disappearance to the Ohm Shinrikyo cult. However, in later years, police would soon discover that on November 3, 1989, only a few months after being declared a religious corporation, multiple senior members of the Ohm Shinrikyo cult drove to Sakamoto's home and injected him, his wife, and his 14-month-old baby with potassium chloride, a lethal injection that would force the body into cardiac arrest, killing all three of them. They then dumped the bodies in 3 different prefectures across Japan, so that in case the bodies were ever found by police, they wouldn't link the murders. They'd opened a new headquarters in Kamikushiki.
All that for just 3 people? Oh no, that's OD. That's OD. That's a smart organization right there. That's a smart fucking...
On the base of Mount Fuji. The cult's recruitment system had proved successful, as Ohm was growing larger and larger every day. With more and more people joining the cult, and with more influence than ever before, Asahara decided to run for parliament.
If you give him this power, it's over. It's over. That's scary, bro.
In 1990, Asahara and 24 other members of his inner circle announced that they would be candidates in this year's Japanese Diet election under their own party, the Shinrito, in English, the Truth Party. Although Asahara's cult had been growing faster than ever before, his campaign of singing and dancing in downtown Tokyo wasn't attracting enough attention. Ultimately, Asahara only received around 1,700 votes out of 500,000 votes cast. To add to the humiliation, some members of his cult hadn't even voted for his party. It's speculated that Ohm's radical prophecies of apocalypses had hindered their ability to gain votes from the general public. Nevertheless, after the cult's humiliating loss in the election, Shoko Asahara started to become more violent, and as time went on, the cult's dangerous activities took a drastic turn for the worse.
Oh no.
But before we get into the cult's later attacks on the Japanese public, we need to establish what the cult's beliefs were. Essentially, Shoko Asahara preached that there were multiple levels of consciousness that a person could reach.
Okay.
Asahara, of course, claimed that he had the highest level of consciousness and that other people could raise their consciousness.
So he thought he was some Lucy shit. He tried being Lucy, basically. When like you only use a certain part of your brain, you only use like 10% of your brain, bro. He unlocked like another, and he thought he was advanced. Come on now.
As well, if they.
He opened his third eye, what they call, right? Is that what is consciousness? Like, is a third eye another conscious? I don't even know, man.
They joined the cult and followed the divine teachings of their supreme master, Shoko Asahara. Members of the cult had to hand over almost all of their worldly possessions to Asahara and were subjected to what the cult called survival training. Here, members would be subjected to prolonged submersion underwater, drug abuse, and mental trauma. Asahara believed that a major war would break out between Japan and the United States in the following years, involving weapons of mass destruction.
That's not his job, though. That's not his job!
This war, he believed, would mark the start of the Armageddon and the end of humanity. Members who tried to leave the cult were brutalized and, in most cases, murdered. Outsiders who publicly spoke out against the cult, as we previously mentioned, were usually assassinated by senior members of Ohm. Asahara motivated his members by telling them stories of his own clairvoyant-like experiences. He claimed that he was able to levitate and fly around rooms on command. However, in all the pictures provided, it's clear that he's either jumping off the floor or the picture has been manipulated in some way.
Literally. That's what I'm saying. Jumping off the floor. Like, what the fuck? He's delusional. These men are delusional. To recruit more young members into the cult, they had created their own animation studio to make a 10-episode anime series named Shuetsu Sekai. It consisted mostly of propaganda and stories about Shoko Asahara and his quest for the supreme truth. This, along with multiple TV appearances, is what made Ohm's recruitment campaign more successful. Is it compy? Is the anime compy? Is it compy?
By the early 1990s, Ohm had not only recruited members of the youth, but accomplished professionals as well. Chemists, scientists, biologists, and even officers from the Japanese Self-Defense Force had joined the Ohm Shinrikyo cult because of its incredibly successful propaganda campaign.
There's no way they're that dumb. In 1990, and you think niggas are levitating? Come on now. Is he gonna levitate?
In 1992, looking to recruit even more people to join
not on TV.
Asahara and several cult members went to Moscow, Russia to open a branch of the cult, a move that would cause a spike in members for Ohm, adding around 20,000 members to the cult. They'd also forged connections with several Russian government officials, like the then Vice President of Russia, Alexander Rutskoy, and Chairman Khuzbalatov. As Ohm became more and more powerful in Japan and Russia, Asahara decided to expand the cult in new ways. After making connections with officials in Russia, Asahara gained access to various military weapons, personnel, and training, and because Ohm still believed that a Third World War was imminent, the group began militarizing rapidly. In the early 1990s, Ohm had apparently began planning to manufacture as many as 1,000 AK-74s and cartridges and had given around 200 of its members military training. The Ohm Shinrikyo cult seemed like it was preparing for war, although almost all of its efforts did not produce fire.
First it starts as God, like him believing in people unlocking consciousness, but now he's going to war. How is that anything to do with? Isn't Buddhism supposed to be about peace and like...
Firearms ultimately failed. Ohm was much more successful with another type of weapon. In the spring of 1993, Ohm had started acquiring resources to mass-produce sarin, a colorless, odorless nerve agent that can lead to vomiting, loss of consciousness, convulsions, paralysis, and
I know them nerve agents be crazy.
Asphyxiation when in contact with skin. Suffice to say, sarin was a very dangerous chemical weapon. Ohm had also considered researching other chemicals like VX, Tauben, and Soman, all of them being very toxic chemical substances. Nevertheless, Ohm had begun researching and producing these chemical agents under the supervision of various chemists who had previously joined the cult, like Masami Tsuchiya, a member who'd gotten his master's degree in chemistry a few years prior.
完全に信頼しています。100%。
This, along with the cult's development of biological weapons like botulism toxins and anthrax, meant that they were ready to launch their first major chemical attack in Tokyo.
So what do they gain out of this though? That's what I want to know. What do they gain out of? Are they trying? They are a terrorist group. We know that. But what do they get? What they gain out of like killing innocent people that don't agree with what they or have not joined their cult? Like realistically, you're not gonna kill the whole of Japan, are you? Like I'm trying to think what they would gain out of this, like being like this. Like they already have a lot of power. Why would they kill off people? Like it just. I understand. Wait, if it's government, if they target like a specific place, like I don't know, like a I don't know, like a government official office or some shit. Like in Japan, that makes sense. Let me see what they target. If it's like a plant or some shit.
On June 29th, 1993, 5 residents living in Kamaido, Tokyo reported a foul odor to the local health authorities. Upon investigation, officers found that the smell was coming from an 8-story building in the area, known to be Om Shinrikyo's headquarters. The smell persisted throughout the next day, and the residents, now fed up with Om's practices, registered 41 complaints to local health authorities to investigate the origin of the smell. But when authorities asked for permission to enter the cult's headquarters and investigate the smell, they were denied entry. After one more day of the foul odor and 118 more complaints filed by residents, Shoko Asahara and his cult were forced out of the area. But more than 2 weeks would go by until city inspectors investigated the cult's headquarters, and by that time, the members and equipment had been long gone.
That's tough. Yeah, but there must be left evidence,
Since no
right?
one had been injured or died from the foul odor, this incident was largely forgotten, until, in the following years, several former Om cult members revealed that a gas they'd been testing, anthrax, had been emanating on the roof of the building. Their intention was to cause an inhalation anthrax epidemic among the residents living in the area. Although their
Why?
plan had turned into a complete disaster, the Om Shinrikyo cult realized that testing chemical weapons in Japan was too risky. So as a way to cover up their research, they bought a remote sheep station in Western Australia, where they test their chemicals on cattle, ultimately killing 29 sheep in their experiments. Now, with a new way to test their chemical weapons away from the scrutiny of the Japanese government, Asahara and his cult were now more experienced and ready to test their chemical weapons again, this time in a quiet neighborhood in the city of Matsumoto.
So he just wanted to kill niggas. I don't get it.
Matsumoto housed 3 judges who were expected to rule against the cult in a land dispute, which made them prime targets for Om, whose plan was to release sarin gas.
So they just released the gas in a place where there are judges, but hopefully killing them, and maybe a couple 100,000, maybe a couple 10,000, right?
Into the courthouse.
Oh, release into the courthouse. Okay.
However, a last-minute change in plans led the cult to target the judge's 3-story apartment building where they lived.
Of course.
So, on June 27, 1994, members of Om drove down a small neighborhood road in Matsumoto. They used a refrigerated truck to release a cloud of sarin, which would turn into an aerosol and float into the homes of the judges. However, in the process of this targeted attack, everyone in the neighborhood who came in contact with the free-floating aerosol was affected. 5 people were found dead in their homes. 2 people had died right after hospital admission, and another had slipped into a coma for 14 years, passing away in 2008. A total of 274 people were treated in a hospital following the attack, one of the largest attacks that Om had conducted at the time. The following investigation turned up little to no information. In fact, police had accused a 44-year-old man named Yoshiyuki Kono of setting up the attack on the neighborhood. It was found that he had several chemicals in his possession, and despite not having the technical know-how to commit such a large-scale attack, he was named the sole perpetrator. Kono had received death threats and hate mail, but in the following year, after discovering that Om had carried out the attack, Kono received public apologies from all news agencies that had accused him, but did not get an apology from the Nagano police force until 2002. It would take around a year for the Om Shinrikyo cult to be implicated in this incident, so, at the time, Om considered this a victory. They'd successfully injured hundreds of residents and killed at least 7, while at the same time testing.
Did they kill the people that they were supposed to kill? That's the real question. Like, come on now. Did they kill the people that they needed to kill? They really targeted all them people just to hopefully, maybe, kill those judges. I bet they didn't even kill one judge.
Their sarin for the first time. This, to them, proved that they were ready for bigger and better targets.
Bigger? 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 Bigger?
Ohm was nearing the peak of their power, with the successful manufacturing of biological and chemical weapons, the semi-successful production of illegal drugs like LSD, and their distribution of these drugs to the Yakuza, Japanese organized crime. But in a series of bad decisions, the empire that was once Ohm would come crumbling down. In early 1995, a wealthy cult member had escaped from Ohm's headquarters with the help of her brother, 69-year-old Kiyoshi Kariya. As a result, Ohm members kidnapped Kariya off of a Tokyo street and brought him to their headquarters, where they drugged and interrogated him for information about his sister, the escapee. However, in the process of the interrogation, Kariya had overdosed, and his body was then burned in an incinerator. Among other factors, Kariya's disappearance had sparked a major police investigation into the Ohm Shinrikyo cult, with plans to simultaneously raid all of Ohm's facilities in March 1995. But 3 days before the raid, Asahara was tipped off by cult members in the Japanese Self-Defense Force. So, a preemptive strike was planned to be carried out in the Tokyo subway during its rush hour. Ohm immediately started producing large quantities of liquid sarin, as well as planning their attack.
That's fucked. That's fucked up. Subway?
On the morning of March 20th,
niggas gonna die. There's gonna be a good 100.
5 Ohm Shinrikyo members carrying packets of liquid sarin wrapped in newspaper boarded 3 different lines in the Tokyo subway: the Hibiya, Chiyoda, and Marunouchi line. The 3 lines were expected to converge at the central Kasumigaseki station, where hundreds of thousands of Japanese citizens passed by every day. The station was also walking distance from Tokyo's Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
I still don't get the point of these attacks. Like, killing innocent people because you know you got found out by you're gonna get investigated and you're gonna get fucked over. It's just a terrorist group, man. That cover up their shit using religion, bro. That's simple as. That's literally all they are. Like, come on, man. I thought religion's supposed to be like a good way of like cleansing yourself, like being a better. But this turned a man dangerous. Opposite. Man was dealing with the Yakuza, man. Like, what?
And health, as well as both the Tokyo Police and National Police Agency, hinting at Ohm's hatred towards the Japanese government. So you're bro, that's not the right way to go about it in the government. Like, you're gonna kill the people that have nothing to do with the government. They might disagree like you, but you're targeting them. Oh, during the morning rush
But they're
hour,
just living, they're just trying to be human. Just getting through life, and then you're gonna gas them like that with a nerve agent?
Tokyo, their plan was set into action. 48-year-old
Fucking
Ikuo
disgusting,
Hayashi
bro.
boarded the southbound train on the Chiyoda line, and after riding the train for 3 stops, he punctured one of 2 sarin packages with the sharpened tip of an umbrella, before disembarking a short while later. This allowed the sarin gas to leak into the air in the subway train, forcing all the passengers in the compact and poorly ventilated area to begin inhaling the poisonous gas. For the next few minutes, the train continued on its scheduled path, but after multiple complaints from passengers of foul smells and liquid sarin spilling onto the floor, it was taken out of service. The effects of sarin gas on the body can range from mild to severe, but the sheer concentration of sarin gas, as well as the compact area of distribution, causes a gradual buildup of symptoms in the body, starting from discomfort about the smell to fits of uncontrollable coughing, choking, and eventually vomiting. At around the same time, 31-year-old Kenichi Hirose boarded the westbound train in the Marunouchi line before puncturing his sarin package after 4 stops. The train unknowingly continued on its scheduled path, before 2 severely injured passengers had to be removed. Despite this, the train continued until it reached its destination, then departed again in the opposite direction, before finally being taken out of service. This specific attack left 1 passenger dead and around 350 injured. On the same subway line and around
That's
the same
one line.
32-year-old Masato Yokoyama boarded the 5th car headed eastbound before slightly poking a hole in one of 2 sarin packages, disembarking 1 stop later. But because Yokoyama hadn't majorly punctured either of his sarin packages, passengers as well as staff hadn't realized what had happened. So the train had continued until the end of its line, where it was eventually evacuated and searched. But searchers hadn't found either of the sarin packages, so the train departed in the opposite direction at 8:32 a.m. But after passengers started falling ill, station attendants finally found the liquid sarin, before promptly mopping the floor and continuing on the scheduled route for another hour. The train was finally taken out of service at 9:27 a.m., leaving no casualties but 200 people in serious condition. On the final Hibiya subway line, university graduate Toru Toyota boarded the northeast-bound train at around 8 a.m. before puncturing both of his sarin packages and promptly leaving at the next station. He was only on the train for a total of 2 minutes, but in this fatal attack, he left 1 passenger dead and 532 others injured as the train continued on its route for 3 more stops. Even then, only the front car was evacuated. The train continued until the next stop, where it was eventually taken out of service.
Okay.
And one of
That
the
one
last
wasn't as
and
bad then.
deadliest attacks took place on the opposite end of the Hibiya subway line.
Opposite?
Senior university graduate Yasuo Hayashi boarded the southbound train, but unlike the other attackers, Hayashi carried 3 sarin packages instead of 2. According to various sources, he had volunteered to use a 3rd flawed sarin package to show his loyalty to the group. Nevertheless, having boarded the train, Hayashi repeatedly punctured 2 of his 3 packages before promptly disembarking. By the time the train had reached the next stop, passengers had noticed the sarin packages leaking fluid onto the floor, prompting 1 passenger to kick it out onto the subway platform. This seemingly harmless action allowed for the sarin gas to infiltrate the air in the subway platform, where dozens of other citizens stood waiting for the train, effectively forcing even more Tokyo residents to be exposed to the gas. This simple action increased the death toll by taking 4 more lives, but not before the people in the train started to feel the effects of the sarin. At 8:10 a.m., 1 passenger began feeling overwhelmed by the effects of the sarin, and pressed the emergency stop button on the train. But because the train was traveling in a tunnel at the time, they had no choice but to continue until they reached the next station, and by that time, multiple passengers had succumbed to the exposure of sarin. In total, 14 people died in the attack.
Wow,
12 of them had died on the day of the attack, 1 died the following day, and another had died in 2020 after the exposure to sarin left them bedridden for 25 years. With around 6,500 people injured, this attack was one of the worst cases of domestic terrorism in Japanese history. After the
25
attack,
years
a
bedridden.
media frenzy swiftly ensued as the cult entered the public eye. Due to this and a number of other factors, in the following years, the Aum Shinrikyo cult would completely fall apart. Multiple full-scale raids were carried out at the Aum headquarters in Tokyo, Kamikuishiki, and Russia.
What about Australia?
During these
What about
raids,
Australia?
police found and seized various explosives, chemical weapons, illegal drugs, and even prisoners who were found in cells in various buildings, most of whom had been part of anti-Aum groups or had been connected to an escaped member. But this didn't stop Aum from trying to carry out even more attacks in a desperate attempt to try and distract police. On May 5th, 1995, a few months after the subway attack, sodium cyanide was found at a public restroom in Tokyo's Shinjuku station, but the device, made out of 2 plastic bags containing different chemicals, was quickly found and seized by police.
Nice, okay.
On May 16th, a letter bomb was mailed to the governor of Metropolitan Tokyo, and upon opening, the letter exploded, blowing the fingers off of the governor's left hand. 5 Aum members were swiftly arrested and charged for the attack. Aum had attempted to commit more terrorist attacks, but most were unsuccessful. The empire that was once a religious corporation worth multi-million yen.
What happened to Aum? What happened to that guy?
Canada, the US, and many more. On May 16th, after evading police for around 2 months, Shoko Asahara was finally arrested after he was found at one of Aum's headquarters, beginning the quote trial of the century as dubbed by Japanese media. Asahara was found guilty on 13 of his 17 charges, as police were just now uncovering his earlier attacks, such as the Sakamoto family murder and the Matsumoto sarin attack. Ultimately, Asahara was sentenced to death by hanging in 2004, and in 2018 he was executed.
Wait, they done that shit in Japan, hanging. Oh no.
Along with many other senior members of Aum. Since then, the Aum Shinrikyo cult has been depicted in video games like the story of Kamikuishiki Village, a Japanese doujin game that recently rose in popularity because of speculation that it was made as a recruitment strategy for the cult. However, it was later revealed that the single-player game was satirical, aimed at making fun of the cult by using real footage from the attack to dramatize their great failure. The Aum Shinrikyo cult terrorized the Japanese population for years, committing assassinations, feeding corruption, and unleashing indiscriminate terror attacks on the people of Tokyo. Even now, Aum Shinrikyo hasn't been fully banned in Japan. A few years after the subway attack in 1995, the cult changed its name to Aleph and is now more private than ever before, although it's now under intense supervision by the Japanese police. After unleashing a fatal attack on the...
Why would you even, like, carry on with that shit when you know, like, why don't you just make a whole new organization? Why would you even associate
public, Japan's
after all that
most
shit?
Dangerous cult was finally brought down. And although the threat was trivialized in later years, the danger that this group posed to the Japanese public cannot be forgotten.
Those nerve agents. It's because, nerve agents are too, like, they're too, bro. It's crazy how a human, I don't think any human should be able to make that. Like, I don't even know why that's a thing. Why scientists ever thought of, like, doing that shit. Because, bro, it's the fact you can't see it and you're like, what's happening to me? And, bro, you could be in coma for 20 plus years.